Hey everybody, what's up? This is Jesse and I am back again for the 23rd installment of Social School. Hope everybody had a good break and is looking forward to getting this year under your belts. What we're going to talk about today is a very, very difficult and challenging social skill. We're going to talk about being assertive. And for those of you that are not familiar with this term, or you haven't had any of the classes yet, what it basically means is how do we stand up for ourselves and do it the right way. And basically what we're talking about is dealing with conflict. And conflict is something that is not always negative. You know, there can be good things that come from conflict, but for a lot of us, we like to avoid it. I am one of those ones who's okay with it because I know that some things just have to be done. And again, in the workplace, it's something that's going to happen. So we want to be prepared for it. We want to be able to deal with it. And we have to be able to deal with conflict. And there's lots of different strategies. Everybody's got their own approach. But I believe personally that being assertive is one of those strategies or one of those solutions that pretty much is always the right thing to do. It doesn't necessarily mean that things are going to go our way. Things won't always, happen the way that we want them to or the way that we would like. But when we be assertive, when we are assertive, then usually things will go better for us when we find ourselves in conflict. And so where I want to start off with this is just kind of thinking about, what are the causes of conflict? And we think about, complaints that you might have in the workplace. One of the most common conflicts that I hear in the workplace is coworkers who don't necessarily want to do their jobs, but they like telling other people what to do. And that is a super common conflict where a coworker is kind of trying to control us or manipulate us. And I will tell you that all human conflict, every single human conflict, always comes down to a basic human need, and that is for control, right? So people have this urge to want to control other people, tell them what to do. They want to control the environment. They want for things to go a certain way. And when things don't go our way, because we're guilty of this too, when things don't go our way, then usually there's some sort of conflict involved. And so as we begin to look at, what it means to be assertive, what we have to talk about is, how do we manage to get and keep control of ourselves? Are we attempting to, control other people? Are we letting other people control us? And so as we start to pick this apart, we have to look at, some basic approaches to dealing with conflict. And there are three basic approaches that I'm going to cover. For some of us, we are very passive, which means we let other people control us. For most of us in the face of conflict, we get aggressive, which means that we want to control other people or tell them what to do or how they should act. So the passive one is kind of on this side and the aggressive one is kind of on this side. And right there in the middle, we have this approach that's called being assertive. How do we stand our ground, stay in control of ourselves without having to deal with too many consequences? How is it that we can manage to keep control of ourselves and to deal with these difficult situations? So some people in the face of conflict are passive, and what that means is allowing others to control you or your feelings. You let that other person kind of be in charge of you. And this happens in the case of bullying, right? So if somebody bullies you for your lunch money and you say, oh, please, don't hurt me, just take my lunch money, then, you're allowing others to control you. And the reason why I put this sad face up here is that the passive response, for the most part, is pretty sad, right? So letting somebody else get control of you or your feelings, allowing them to manipulate you, is not the move. And so I would say that probably about a third of the population, or somewhere around 30% of us, are passive. And if you're one of those people that wants to avoid conflict at any cost, that's not trying to cause any waves or cause any trouble, I understand where you're coming from, but oftentimes this can lead to abusive situations where we allow someone else to abuse us or to, hurt us or manipulate us. and we let them get away with it. And so being passive really creates as many problems as it solves, because in a workplace situation, it is not okay for a customer to abuse us. It is not okay for a coworker, and it is not okay for a boss, right? You do not deserve to be abused. Whatever it is that you've done wrong, you do not deserve to be abused, and it is not okay for someone else to abuse you. So allowing others to control us or our feelings is what is called being passive, and it's just not the right way to deal with it. Some of us are just shy. Some of us are just nice people, right? We don't want to cause any trouble. We don't want to hurt anybody. But for those of us who, let our shyness or our niceness turn into, that passive response, we're letting other people take advantage of us. We have to rethink this. Being passive is not the move, because you're being taken advantage of. You're being mistreated. And as I said before, you don't deserve that. And like I said, it's about a third of people who this category falls into, and that's, nothing scientific. It's just my professional opinion, what I've seen so far, the world of work. But being passive, letting others take advantage of you, really is not doing anybody any favors, because if you allow someone to bully you in the workplace, then probably they're going to bully other people, and it kind of sets up this thing where you're allowing them to get away with it, and when they get away with it, they might think it's a good idea later on down the line. And no matter who it is, they should not have permission to abuse you. And so you have to stand up for yourself and figure out how to do it the right way. And so I just want to say again to my passive people, this is very hard. Just standing up for yourself and knowing what your rights are and how to speak up is very difficult. But we're going to talk about, what it looks like when you speak up for yourself, when you say, hey, that's not fair. This is not okay. I don't have to take this. You can't say that to me. You can't do that to me. So for my passive people out there, I just want to remind you, it's time for you to grow up a little bit and stop letting other people take advantage of you. And for a lot of people who are passive, they just stuff it, they try to ignore it, they act like nothing happened, they try to stay cool, and they do that for a while until it happens over and over and over. And finally, when they've had enough, then they explode, right? They start yelling back, they act out, they get themselves into trouble. And what happens most of the time when someone gets themselves in trouble is it's because they're being aggressive. And my definition of aggressive behavior is any time that you're trying to control others with your angry feelings or your behavior. When you start telling people what to do, when you abuse them with your words, or in a worst case scenario, you abuse them physically, that's when it becomes aggressive. And people in general, I would say most of us, so probably 2/3 of us, have a tendency when others are being aggressive towards us, for us to be aggressive towards them, right? So if a bully tries to take your lunch money, you say, hell no, you can't have my lunch money, you give me your lunch money, I'm not taking this. And you act out, or you do something like that. But in the world of work, being aggressive oftentimes leads to those serious consequences that we want to avoid. You might get in trouble, get written up, you might get fired. In worst case scenarios, physical fights break out. And that's why, being aggressive is not really the move. And just stuffing it and being passive until you do finally blow up and be aggressive can be so dangerous. So for the record, I think that being aggressive in the face of conflict is a natural response. That's what we're programmed to do. Again, when people yell at us, we have the urge to yell back. If somebody is, trying to manipulate us, then we say, no, you're not getting away with that. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen, and you need to get yourself right, and you do, and we get out of control. And the aggressive response frequently is out of control, right? So, we get so mad that we're not even in control of ourselves anymore. And that's when those serious consequences happen. So I really feel like, again, just because it's natural, it doesn't make it the right thing to do. if it is wrong for other people to try to control us with their angry feelings, then it is just as wrong for us to do it. And in general, this is where we have to, kind of check ourselves and say, okay, what is it that I really want to happen in this situation, and how am I going to get what I want out of this situation? Because you may get what you want out of an aggressive response. If you intimidate somebody, if you scare them into doing, what you want them to do, in the short term, that may get you, again, get you what you want, but it's not necessarily in the long run probably the best thing for you to do, because you may get a bad reputation, you may have to deal with the consequences for it. And so the sorts of aggressive behaviors, that we see in the workplace are the kind of things that get people fired. And so I even though it's a common thing, I understand completely, for people who become aggressive, we have to think of a better way, right? We have to stay calm, we have to stay in control, we have to keep ourselves grounded and centered and be prepared for these things in order for us to respond to them in a way that is not aggressive. So then the real question is, if I'm not going to let other people control me, and I'm not going to try to control other people, then what is it that I need to do? And in this case, what I recommend to every single person who has to deal with conflict, which is all of us, I recommend that you be assertive. And what that means is standing up for yourself, doing it the right way, staying in control, and not attempting to control others. And if you look at the face that I have here in this video, you notice that the face is completely flat, right? So I'm not crying about whatever it is you did. I'm not, sad about it. I'm not going to be aggressive. I'm not going to, growl at you or yell at you or do any of those things. I'm just going to tell you what's up. And I'm going to do it in a soft, calm voice that lets you know that I mean business. And, for us to be assertive, we have to be serious without being angry. And that is extremely difficult to do. I would say that probably only about 10% of the people that I interact with really know how to be assertive. So this is extremely difficult. It is very, very hard to do. You may have never seen it happen before. And that's kind of normal. That's natural. That's why I have to teach this lesson, is how do we manage to stand up for ourselves and do it the right way without losing control and attempting to control that other person or tell them what to do or how they should act or whatever. We have to set some limits, we have to set some boundaries, and we have to do it in an assertive way. Thus far in our discussion of social skills, we've talked about all kinds of possibilities as far as dealing with conflict. We've talked about things like apologizing and maybe the possibility, that we need to ask for help in a conflict situation. We ask for a manager to deal with it and those sorts of things. But today I'm going to take it a step further, and we're going to talk about, being assertive. And what does that really look like as far as behavior? So again, I said this before, we can't be passive when someone is taking advantage of us or hurting us in the workplace. And we can't be aggressive, right? So I'm not going to cry about it. I'm not going to scream and yell. I'm going to look you dead in the eye and I'm going to say, hey, I feel upset when you talk to me like that. And if you can't get yourself under control, we're going to have this conversation at another time. And so there are two basic kind of phrases or strategies, and we're going to chain these two together. But as far as what that behavior really looks like, we're going to talk about two things. And one of them is I messages, right? So we always kind of want to talk about ourselves instead of the other person. And we're trying really to avoid an argument here, with this I message. We're going to talk about, how we feel. We're going to talk about what our expectations are. We're going to talk about what our boundaries are. And then the second part of that is that we set some very specific boundaries or limits on what it is that we're willing to take, what it is we expect from the other person, and what we're going to do if they can't meet those expectations. So as we get into this and break it down a little bit further, there are going to be some of these things that I say to you and you look at them and you think, oh, that's not going to work and I'm not going to do that. But I can tell you, as someone who has dealt with a lot of conflict in my life, that being assertive is almost always the right thing to do. There are some obvious exceptions. If someone's going to put their hands on you, then obviously you have to defend yourself. And there are some times where, maybe right at that moment you don't say anything or do anything. But at some point, you're going to want to know how to be assertive. And what I plan to do is kind of show you what that looks like. Assertive communication almost always starts with an I message, right? When we start talking about, you're acting stupid or you're pissing me off or whatever it is, then we're setting ourselves up for an argument. And most times people in conflict, they want that argument, because they want to argue and they want to win. But what we're going to do is we're not going to give them anything to argue with. We're going to start off with talking about our feelings. And so what you say in an assertive communication is you say, I feel blank when you blank, and you can kind of fill in those blanks with whatever the appropriate feeling is, right? So maybe what you're dealing with is someone is acting in a way that's unsafe, and you say, I feel really nervous when, you mishandle that machinery, or when, you don't follow the boss's rules, or try to make up your own, excuses. Many times when we're dealing with somebody else's anger, we say something like, I feel upset when you talk to me like that. I feel embarrassed when, you chew me out in front of everybody else. And really, there's nothing there to argue with. We're just talking about our own feelings and that other person's behavior and how we feel about it. And no one can tell you or argue with you about your feelings. Your feelings are your own. They're unique to you. They belong to you. And so you have every right to tell someone how you feel. Now, for most of us, we feel very uncomfortable with this, but I can tell you that if you're starting to have an assertive conversation or starting in assertive communication, starting with this I message is a great place to start. And so many times students say, well, yeah, what if I say this I message and they don't necessarily respond in a way that, someone cares about it? So let's say we're being bullied at work and you say, I feel upset when you try to bully me. And the other person, what if the other person comes back with, so what? What are you going to do about it? I don't care. What are you going to do? And that's the point where we start trying to set good boundaries and limits. And the follow-up phrase to the I message goes something like this. I say, if you don't, or if you cannot blank, fill in the blank, then I will have to blank. And at this point, what we're doing is we're telling the other person what it is that we expect from them. And some examples would be, if you can't talk to me in a calm voice, then I will have to get a manager. If you, continue to steal on the job, then I will have to tell somebody about it. You can kind of fill in the blank with whatever it has, whatever you've decided that you're going to do. And again, you are setting the limit. You're saying, I'm in control of this situation. I am not going to allow you to abuse me or break rules or, get me in trouble. And if you can't stop, then, I'm going to have to do something about it. It's usually at this point in the lesson where somebody's like, whoa, 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 Jesse, I'm not doing this. You know what I mean? I'm not soft. I'm not a snitch. I'm not going to go out like that. You know what I mean? I'm not going to, do all this. I'm not going to talk about my feelings or any of this stuff. And I have to check it. And I have to tell you that, if I warn somebody about what it is that I'm going to do, then I'm not a snitch. I'm giving them the opportunity to make the right choice, and I'm letting them know, hey, I'm not trying to be a snitch here, but if you can't get right, if you can't do what I need you to do in order for me to feel okay, in order for me to be okay and for this to work out the right way, then I am going to have to tell a manager. I am going to have to get a teacher. I may have to, walk away. And this is one of those ones that it can even work in your personal life, So if you're ever in an argument with a boyfriend or a girlfriend and, they're doing something that really bothers you, then, maybe what you say is, And I will tell you that I have done this with my wife. We argue sometimes about, if we're hanging out together and we're on the phone or something like that. Then, maybe what I say to my wife is, I feel really sad, when you're on your phone. And if you would rather be on your phone than hang out with me, then maybe, we don't necessarily need to hang out right now, and I'll go do something else. You can even use this with your parents. You can use this with your friends. You say, I feel uncomfortable when you act that way, or I feel really sad when you talk bad about my friend. And if you can't stop, if you can't, be respectful, then, maybe we can't be friends anymore. And again, people are like, oh man, that's soft, and I'm not going out like that. I don't want to be, that snitch. I don't want to be that person. And you know what? At the end of the day, that is your decision. You have to decide if this is not the move for you. I can't say what the right thing to do in every situation is, but what I can tell you is that when you are assertive, when you do stand up for yourself and do it the right way, most of the time, things are going to turn out the best way they possibly could in this conflict situation. And it's a great place to start. Is it going to solve every problem? No. Is it going to, again, make things go exactly the way that you want to? Maybe not necessarily. But this is where we start. Now, at this point, I have to tell you, I don't expect that you guys are going to go out and immediately, do this, because for most of us, you haven't seen it modeled for you. You haven't seen it work. But as somebody who is 48 years old and dealt with, some of the angriest students that Madison County had to offer, when I taught at the alternative school, I dealt with angry people constantly. And I've had very serious, very dangerous situations that I was able to resolve by being assertive. And again, this is not a natural response for us. This is not what we are trained to do for the most part, but that's why I'm here. I'm trying to teach you guys, to give you a lesson that maybe somewhere down the road you might say, oh yeah, that's what Jesse told me to do. Or maybe you see this happen in front of you. Maybe you do run across one of those assertive people and you say, oh man, that was really cool. This turned out, and I didn't have to put up with a bunch of people's stuff, and I didn't get myself in trouble, and I handled this situation, and I did it the right way. So, at this point, I have about reached my time limit, if not gone over. This is probably going to be one of my longer videos. But I strongly suggest to all of you that you at least think about the possibility of being assertive when you talk to other people. Don't let someone take advantage of you. Don't let someone abuse you. And on the other side of that, don't abuse anybody and don't try to manipulate. These are things that are very serious and can get us in a lot of trouble in the workplace. So when possible, please try to be assertive. Take care of yourselves. I hope everybody enjoyed this video, and maybe you learned something, maybe you didn't, but I hope that, for most of us, we get something out of this, and I will see everybody when I come back. The last few videos that I'm going to shoot for the year are going to be about decision making. How do we decide, what is the right thing for us to do? We're going to look at decision making and go into that a little bit deeper, but I'll save those videos for another time. Thank you so much. I appreciate everybody and hope to see you soon.